Singing this new, sing it. Someone asked last night if I could play it. Just played it for forever. One of those nigunim, doesn't stop. All right. Thank you so much for those of you who came. I'm sorry. I have to apologize to many of the regulars that A, they couldn't make it tonight, and B, aren't feeling good also. So refuah shlema to whoever needs refuah shlema, and all the Yerushalayim chevra, most of the Yerushalayim chevra. All the chevra that have cars, all the rides weren't happening either. Also from Modi'in, so it messed up the night. But tomorrow night and next Monday night, I'm busy, so we had to change it to Sunday night. But because last week was Hanukkah, and before that I was out of town, I couldn't miss one more week. Pashut asur, especially the last week in Parshat Bereshit. There's no way. In fact, when I was listening back to last year, sometimes I stop and I listen to what we learned last year to make sure we don't, learn exactly the same text. Chas v'shalom, right? That would be the worst thing in the world. But Daniela, it was the first time you brought her out. You brought Sarah out and you hear her in the back. And, right? Right. You hear the little, yeah. So, also, it must be Shelley's grandmother's yahrzeit also around now, because we did it last year in her memory. But whoever's here, I'm very, very happy because these parshiot, it doesn't stop. The depth doesn't stop. It keeps on getting deeper every single week. And we are in what you call the headquarters of Ishbitz, because last Shabbos the Torah is from the Ishbitz Rebbe, from the Man Shilach, and his son and his grandson, the Sod Yesharim, are the strongest Torahs that we have. In fact, this past Shabbos, it was the Sod Yesharim, the Radziner Rebbe's Yortzeit, and tomorrow night is the Ishbitzer's Yortzeit, the Meir Shilach himself. So we have tonight, I want to go right to the text because we have something very, very important to approach tonight, something very exciting to approach tonight. First of all, the learning tonight should be for the Refuah Shlema of Jacqueline Bas Dvora, and also to my brother, my soul brother, his Abba, Eliezer ben Sarah Golda, my brother Stewie's Abba in Florida, and should have a complete Refuah Shlema. We have something tonight to learn which is so special. What we did was we had to take a number of pieces from Rabbi Shlomo and Parshat Vayechi. We have a number of pieces where Rabbi Shlomo speaks about a theme that has to do with more or less the beginning of the Parsha. But the pieces, we have a lot of pieces in Rabbi Shlomo discussing this, and we had to take apart a few of the pieces and butch them back together. But before we say anything, Rabbi Shlomo said the following before saying the following words. He said that all of us are in the middle. What does that mean? We're all in the middle. He says, well, for one, none of us are here for the first time anyway. So on an incarnation level, we're all here. We're all in the middle. Second is that none of us were just born. We're all in the middle, and none of us are checking out. We're all in the middle of life, no matter how you look at it. Everyone is always in the middle. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone because the theme that we've been going through the last 5-6 months has been you're never in the middle, you're never in the end, you're always in the start. But tonight, I'm actually going to go and say, no, we're in the middle right now. In our Parsha, if you thought you were on the edge of your chair last Shabbos reading, in this Parsha, when Yaakov Avinu says, get together and let me tell you how the great day is going to happen. And then he doesn't really say how it's going to happen. It's a very heavy thing. I don't want to say traumatic, but it's a very heavy thing in there. So, Yaakov Avinu gathers in all the sons. He asfu ve'agid lachem et asher yikre etchem be'acharit hayamim. Gather together so that I can share with you and let me tell you how it's going to come down. That's more or less the words of Yaakov Avinu. And everyone's on the edge of their chair saying, okay, what is he going to say right now? How is Mashiach going to come? That's what we care about anyway. Like, every day of our lives is, how's Mashiach going to come? What is it going to be like? What is it going to look like? Who's that last person I have to knock off before Mashiach comes? What's that last thing I got to do right before the great day comes? When is it? When is it? What's the last day? And Yaakov Avinu doesn't really say anything exactly pertaining to that. However, he totally does. And last year we learned how through the wording of Yaakov Avinu where he says, Hey Asfu, just that one word, that's how Mashiach is going to come. That's for sure. Just pshat. Hey Asfu doesn't just mean get together. It means gather yourselves, each of you, get your own trip together and join the klal. Many of us are so dependent on, like, if I'm only part of a community and I'm part of what everyone else is doing, then I'm part of something. But you know what happens if you're nothing and you just join a community? You're just nothing with a community. It's not really anything different. You're just surrounded by people. But gather yourself together, get your own act together, and then join the tribes, join everyone together. That's a whole different ballgame. Tonight, we're looking at something else. One of the most famous episodes in the Torah is the act of this, of the crossing of the arms. Crossing of the hands. What Reb Shlomo does with Yaakov Avinu's decision to cross the arms is out of this world. And in fact, it's one of the rare times where Reb Shlomo is not saying something in the name of another Rebbe. When he taught this, he began by saying, let me share how Brother Humble, what did he call himself? Brother, your humble servant. How your humble servant understands this parsha. Now, like everything, when it comes to Reb Shlomo's parish in the Torah, You have to completely forget, completely wipe away from yourself the whole notion of whatever it is, whatever you thought the right way to understand the pshat was. Because you see, when you come into the ball game, when you come into our learnings, the Baruch Hashem, or learn some of these Torahs from this farm, if you come in with your own, well, this is how it has to end up because this is what it means, then you'll be left with a lot of questions. Now, well, this is a big a warning tonight, because everyone here is going to have the same question over and over again in tonight's learning. So I ask of you one thing. Don't ask it. And hopefully we'll answer it at the end of the learning. You all know that's probably shtuyot, we probably won't, but there's no other way of us getting through what we have to learn tonight. But no, the truth is, you're all going to be asking the same question. Everyone, myself included. But please hold on to the question till a little bit later. Okay? Okay, here we go. And welcome to all the Web Yeshiva students. Thank you so much for joining us. There are people here from all over the place. What is chut? Refuah Shlema Amy. Okay. I tell, because I see a lot of new faces here, and some here tonight, try not to read ahead, even though this is English. Let's try to get through this together, Bezrat Hashem. Now, the beginning, without understanding the first two paragraphs, we're going to be lost for the rest of the night. So please, 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 pay most of your heart attention to the first two paragraphs. They're the most important. What? There aren't, I'm sorry. I thought we'd only have a minion tonight, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, I'm very happy, but there's not enough? I thought I printed 30. Okay. Alright, Chavre, let's look inside. The beginning is the most important, okay? This Shabbos, we're learning about Yaakov ready to bless Yosef's two sons, Menashe and Ephraim. And this we've learned before. Menashe comes from the phrase, Ki nashani Elokim eskol amali. God gave me strength to forget all my troubles. That's why Menashe is called Menashe. And Ephraim comes from the words, Ki hifrani Elokim be'eretz oni. God gave me the strength to become more and more, even in light of my pain. So those are two completely different names. Menashe is that I was able to not think of my pain, and Ephraim is, from my pain, I am who I am. Do you see how that works inside? You see how that's mamish? Chavre, I'm not telepathy, I don't know, does anyone understand how those two names work out? Menashe is because I forgot everything, and Ephraim is because dafka from the pain itself, I have become who in light of my pain, I am who I am right now. Now what's the title of this shiur? Forgetting and remembering. Now this is, I just want to say one more thing before we go inside, back inside. This last Shabbos of Vayigash and Vayechi is the ultimate debate is, what's higher, the Baal Tshuva or the Tzaddik? Now we know that Yosef is the Tzaddik and Yehuda is the Baal Tshuva, right? Who does Mashiach come from? The Mashiach that's going to redeem us from this world is the Baal Tshuva. Mashiach comes from David HaMelech, which is Yehuda and Tamar. That's where it comes from. So you think like that, oh, simple, Baal Tshuvas, they're much higher than a Tzaddik. So the Kotzker Rebbe knew people would be saying that for many years to come, and the Kotzker Rebbe has a very obnoxious vort, excuse my language. It says, "B'makom shebalei tshuva omdim en tzadikim yicholim la'amod." In a place where balei tshuvas stand, tzadikim can't stand, which we understand it to be because Baal Tshuva is up here and the tzaddiks can't get that place. The Kotzker Rebbe said that a tzaddik can't stand in the place of Baal Tshuva because it stinks of the wrench of their averas from their past. Yeah, but you're supposed to laugh. Meaning, he did say that, but why is everyone taking that so seriously? So he said that. Great. Don't worry. We don't hold like that. Meaning, it's not like halacha we paskin that. We paskin that tzaddikim are can't stand Baalei Teshuvas are. Meaning, what became really cool? It became really cool in our generation because of where we're at to be like, those straight people, the ones who never do anything wrong, they don't know how to do anything real in this world. Because in this world, you can only when you get yourself so dirty and then rise to the above, then you're somebody. Rabbi Shlomo explains, you need both. It's not a matter of who's higher, who's not higher. The tzaddik is no one without the Baal Tshuva, because who is he going to give his light to? His candle was going to light, what if there's no unlit candles, whose light does his light shine on? And the Baal Tshuva obviously needs the tzaddik for inspiration and that torch to know where to go for it, and how to get about in life, and how to move on. Who's higher is a question that's not shaykh. Where are we is the question that's shaykh. And where are we heading to is the question that's shaykh. This past Shabbos, in the afternoon shiur, we had an incredible zchut to learn a beautiful piece in the Mei Shlachim Vayigash, but the bottom line is that Yehuda is the ultimate Baal Tshuva. Because a Baal Tshuva is someone who, no matter how low he falls, he gets to a point where he says, God can do anything. Remember, we're learning it this Shabbos. God can do anything, and if God can do anything, I want to be part of it. So God can do anything, and I can be part of God doing anything. That's how Yehuda approaches tshuva in the world. And that's how he approaches his own balagan with his brother. The Ribono Shel Olam can do anything. He can get me out of this pit. He can redeem me, my brother, bring us back to our father. But I want to be part of it, not just miracles. I want to be part of it. So in order for Hashem's most miraculous miracles to take place, HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs the Baal Tshuva. Because if everything's just done through the tzaddik, none of us would think we have a chance to do anything in this world. Hashem, so to speak, uses the Baalei Tshuva in the world in order to show how great he is. And Mashiach doesn't come from the guy that doesn't slip. Mashiach doesn't come from the guy who is at minyan every single morning. We need him. But Mashiach comes from the guy who forgets to set his alarm, Mashiach comes from the guy who forgot that saying something bad, isn't always the right thing to do. And malasot, we didn't decide that, by the way. These are not our decisions of who should be our leader. This is why the Ribono Shel Olam chose Malchus Beis David, the kingdom of the house of David. Now let's go back into the text. Again, we have these two names, Ephraim and Menashe. So Yosef told Menashe, who was the firstborn, right? He was the Bechor, to stand on his father's right side, over here, and Ephraim, the younger one, to stand on his left side. Now we know what happens. Instead of going like this, he goes like this, right? So the question is, why didn't Yaakov simply rearrange them? Why does he have to go like this? You think it's just because he was tired? Everything, every movement of any limb that the Avot and Imahot ever did was filled with Torah. Absolutely filled with messages for you and I today. So the fact that Yaakov keeps them like this and just goes like this means, Menashe, you need to stay here, but I need to put my right hand on your younger brother. You have a place of being a Bechor, but I need to shift the energy for a second to your younger brother. Rabbi Shlomo is going to explain how by going like this, it was completely connected to the meaning of their names. Menashe is Kinashani Elokim, God made me forget everything. Ephraim is, I don't forget one thing. Dafka, from all the pain that I went through, I've become the ruler over Egypt. That's why Yosef names him Ephraim. Second text. Second paragraph. So Yosef told Menashe, who was the firstborn, to stand on his father's right side, and Ephraim, the younger one, to stand on his left. Yaakov didn't say, no, this is wrong. He said, it's okay. He, Menashe, He's the firstborn, and he has to stand on my right side. And then Yaakov crossed his hands. He put his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Menashe. So what's going on here? It's not stam, Chavra. Friends, you have to open your hearts. The first thing a person has to do in the service of God is that you really have to forget everything you did wrong. Okay. I've met a lot of Balei Tshuva, or while they're in the process of Tshuva, they're into this, like this anti-charata, anti-regretting stage in life. Because for whatever the reason is, we live in a world where we think that I have to be completely happy with everything I've ever done because look where it brought me to where I am today. Right? That's great, but Mazel Tov, where are you today? You're so happy where you are today, right? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Part of tshuva, part of my life, part of what I'm going through, is that I have to forget about all the averas I did. I have to forget about all the darkness I was in the beginning. I have to forget about it. Menashe, the Bechor, he's the first one. Ki nashani Elokim et kol amali. I gotta forget about all the garbage I brought down into the world. I gotta forget about all the darkness. Look inside. Menashe, whose name is from the word nashani, forgetting, was the first one. He was 100% the first step. Yaakov said, I'm not denying that he comes first, but I want to connect you to the end, to the level of the end. What does that mean? Meaning, Yaakov says, I want to connect you, Am Yisrael, through these brachas, to the end. What do you mean, the end? I want to connect you now to Ephraim, to the energy of Ephraim. Even though Menashe is the firstborn, now I want to connect you to Ephraim. What does it mean that Yaakov wants to connect us to Ephraim? Look at this. It's true. At the beginning, we're in the 5th line in this paragraph. It's true. At the beginning, Menashe was very important. First, you have to forget. And if you begin to remember before the end, it's mamish not good. Now, hold on, okay? I want you, please look at the words and hold off with your questions for a second. You have to forget while you're at the beginning or in the middle. But then, when you come to the end, and this is the level of Ephraim, when you come to the end, you have to remember everything on the level of Ephraim. But this, friends, this is a different kind of remembering. In order to explain this very difficult paragraph, which he just said, I'm going to let him try to explain it much better than I could ever attempt. And then we'll do a pause right after we read the next paragraph to see if that sheds some light on this. It's a very difficult paragraph. And I want you all to know, it took us 6 to 7 months editing this piece. It's a Shiur from January 1977 that Rabbi Shlomo gave in Rechavia. You hear his voice. I could probably send you guys the audio of him teaching this Shiur because it's very pristine quality, it's beautiful quality. He even says over and over again, friends, we're taking off. He's going to another place. I want you now to see what this last paragraph means based on the next paragraph. Just to say it in a very way out way, although we're not on the level yet. Imagine you tell a Yiddilah who came out of Auschwitz, if you walk around thinking all day about Auschwitz, you won't be able to bear it. You have to forget it a little bit. It's heartbreaking. How can you utter such words? It's even blasphemy to say it. But otherwise, a person can't keep on living. This Yiddilah has to forget it a little bit. But on the other hand, who are we kidding? How can he forget it? He's mamish not permitted to forget it. So the answer is like this. On the level of the beginning, forget it. But on the level of the end, you can't forget anything. Nothing, nothing, nothing. What's going on here? Baruch Hashem, I don't think anybody in this room can personally relate to leaving Auschwitz, right? However, we have big nisyonos in our lives, and many of us have our own mini or major traumas that are very, very difficult. What Rabbi Shlomo is saying over here is that the only way that anyone made it out of Auschwitz and look what we did. Who built Eretz Yisrael? People that came out of the death marches. People that saw their parents being put into gas chambers. If they didn't consciously or subconsciously forget for a few moments the horror and trauma they saw that their eyes witnessed, there's no way they could have done anything in the world. Nothing. So to speak, they kind of forgot it only to be able to do something in this world. But then after that, who are they kidding? No one forgets it. So on the level of the beginning, if you want to begin to do something in this world, if you want to begin to release yourself from the shackles of the pain of your past, don't think that if you think enough about it and you ponder and you stick your mind to something, then you'll solve it. And then you'll understand why you had to go through so much darkness or why you were involved with so much darkness. Thinking about things too much, especially the most horrible things in the world, never bring a person to say, it's like, I think if I just go like this and try as hard as I can to understand the traumas of my life, then I'll come to peace, ma pitom. So in the beginning, you have to forget. But at the end, when you make it, then you're not allowed to forget anything. You can only see how everything you went through in life was for the best and had to be the way it is, not in the beginning of your journey. Only at the end. Only when you made it. No. That's the question of all questions. How does a person know when he can look back? When is it that you make it in life? When is it that it became clear enough and now you can look back and say, I don't have to forget anything. I could look at everything. I can look right in the eye of all the pain and be like, yeah, sure. I see how this all led up to exactly where I am right now. We're going to hold off with that question. Okay? Now, next paragraph. There are certain things in life which I have to forget. It's better for me to forget these things. But this is only before I fix myself. After I fix myself, I have no right to forget anything, because I look back and realize that everything I did wrong was part of this great fixing, so how could I forget it? You know, let's give an example, and if anyone here wants to share an example, a personal example in life, please let me know. But for instance, while a person is searching for their zivug, when they're searching for their soulmate, if they go on dates thinking of how horrible it is that they're still not married, the person that shows up to that cafe is not going to be sending wedding invitations in a few weeks. So you have to forget how painful the process of being alone is. But when you're standing under your chuppah, you're supposed to forget all the times that you spent Fridays wondering if you're going to have a Shabbos meal with somebody? You see how it works? That's just a very simple, down-to-earth example. But this parallel, we could see this equation in everyone's life. And it works by each person differently. Now, Rabbi Shlomo he's gonna drill this in even deeper. Next page. And I changed it for the Chevra and Web Yeshiva as well. Okay, look at this. Look what Rabbi Shlomo says. Now let me ask you on a very high level. Do you think mistakes are so bad? Imagine there'd be no such thing as mistakes in the world. And the Gemara says in Gittin, Ein Adam Omed al Divrei Torah ela im ken nichshal bahem. You can't really learn until you make mistakes. You can be a great physician or a great physicist, by just remembering the information in the books. But, and this is something that's so hard for us to just accept, but when it comes to your own soul, when it comes to your own fixing to the real depths of life, it's something else. En adam omed al divrei Torah, ela im ken nechshal bahem. There is no way for us to fix our neshamas, to become, you can't become a Baal Tshuva unless you have to do Tshuva. Do you realize that? You can't become an owner of Tshuva unless you need to do Tshuva in this world. So Rabbi Shlomo is saying, when it comes to things that aren't really dependent on the fixing of my neshama, I don't have to necessarily make mistakes in order to learn. I could become an incredible lecturer. I could become the most incredible demagogue, and I can share words that inspire the world. And I don't necessarily have to fail at public speaking in order to excel in it. But you know what's so weird is that a person could stand up on a podium and touch millions of people's neshamas, and yet that might have nothing to do with the fixing of his own neshama. Nothing. Why are most, very popular musicians at a certain point, or eventually, absolutely messed up, big time? Because at a certain point, they realize the dichotomy of, oh my God, 3 million people would love it if I would just say hello to them, and I can't even say hello to myself in the mirror. What is this? What's going on? Because when it comes to the fixing of your own neshama, it takes a lot more than just not making mistakes and being perfect. There is no other way. And again, I have to always put out the warning here, because it's happened before that it went a really wrong way, that you can take this learning and say, friends, I want to be the biggest Baal Tshuva in the world. That means I need a lot. If I want to be the biggest Baal Tshuva, I need to have as much Tshuva as I can to do, right? So I need to do the dirtiest, nastiest things the next few days, so that by Shabbos, I have the potential of becoming a tremendous Baal Tshuva. Don't worry. Even if you choose tonight to be a tzaddik, Hashem will help you, but Hashem will throw some things your way also, so you also become Baal Tshuva. Hashem is putting enough on you to get through that test, okay? You don't have to put it on yourself as well. Hashem provides us with enough hurdles and obstacles all the time in order for us to understand what it means. Ein adam omed al divrei Torah. A person doesn't mean omed al divrei Torah. He doesn't stand, he doesn't own words of Torah. Elaim ken nichshal bahem. Unless he falls, unless he makes a mistake. But that's not something that you provide for yourself. That you and I receive. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. On a daily basis. Baruch Hashem. On a daily basis. No one knows what I'm talking about, right? Just me? Just me? Hence the silence or the nervous giggling in the... Right. Okay, look what he says here. Because he's gonna really go even further right now. This is so beautiful. Why does everything take so long in the world? What is he referring to essentially? Fixing our own neshamas, and fixing Eretz Yisrael, and bringing Mashiach. Why does everything take so long in the world? It's not because we haven't done enough good yet. Everyone read the next line to yourself. It's because we haven't made enough mistakes. It's crazy. We have a strange feeling that we're getting closer to the end. We have this feeling that we're getting closer to Mashiach, but you don't see people doing more good. You see people making more and more mistakes. And I always think about this. It's like, no, we always say like, oh, Mashiach's right around the corner. You're thinking, when they said this 50, 60 years ago, it's like, totally right on. Now, like, okay, Mashiach better be around the corner. Not Mashiach is right around the corner. It's like, please, like, if he's not around the corner, then we're really messed up right now, right? So Rabbi Shlomo is saying, let's be real right now. We all feel that the Geula is right around the corner, but it's not because of the level of piety in the world has now risen to reached new heights in the world. Lefech HaGamur. And it's so weird how there hasn't been more Talmud Torah in Eretz Yisrael than ever. Ever. And there hasn't been more Chilul Hashem in Eretz Yisrael than ever either. And in the world. There hasn't been, there's probably more Shabbos tables today than ever was in the world. And yet there's probably more people that ran away from their parents' Shabbos table also than ever in the world. What does that mean? What is this? This paragraph is going to save our lives. Or our sanity. Look at this again. Why does everything take so long in the world? But it's not because we haven't done enough good yet. It's because we haven't made enough mistakes, or because we haven't learned enough from the mistakes. It's crazy. We have a strange feeling that we're getting closer to the end. We have this feeling that we're getting closer to Mashiach. But you don't see people doing more good. You see people making more and more mistakes. Take the Holy Land. You look around and all you see are mistakes. I mean, if you look up the block where I live, right, when you come down, and you'll see this project going up over here, right over here, right? Okay? Now, do you know this project went up? Our dear friend Josh, who's building over here, the speed of this project is unprecedented. I don't know if you've noticed. It's gone up faster than almost any project that takes place. Why? Because we have all the help in the world to like liyashev Eretz Yisrael. We're having just everyone so happy about it. I hope so. But it's because our Prime Minister got up on a forum a few hours ago speaking about more and more and more viturim, more and more concessions that will be made, which always has that horrible Amalek word called building freeze, Amalek. You look at Eretz Yisrael, are we closer to Mashiach? Well, yeah, there are more people here now, but the direction, something is so off, but it's not off. It's that's the only way we can actually stand on what we have. It's the only way in the world we can actually be with that which we have and which is given to us. Take the Holy Land. You look around and all you see are mistakes. But give out. Everything is full of mistakes. But obviously, we are learning tremendously deep things from all these mistakes. So you see, what I want to say is like this. Now he's going to give us a taste of what Yaakov Avinu meant when he said, He'asfu ve'agida lachem et asher yikra etchem b'chatayim. Now with this next, what he's going to say now, we will understand what Yaakov Avinu was trying to reveal to the brothers and what he was doing when he went like this. What it's going to be like when Mashiach is here. And this is a mashal, it's a parable. He's used many different parshas. Let's say I meet a very beautiful girl in the subway. I make myself strong. I walk up to her and I ask her what her name is, where she lives, and I ask her for her phone number. Tremendous. I'm a genius. I remember her number. The next day I call her up. Hey, Sprinzele. That was the name always. The girl's name was always Sprinze. Sprinzele. Hey, Sprinzele, it's me, your subway friend. Meet me tomorrow night. A week later we get engaged. Mazel tov. It's a very high story, but it doesn't turn me on so much. Now imagine I meet this girl and she tells me her number. But I don't exactly remember what she said. So for days and nights I mamish try every combination of numbers under the stars. I'm just about to give up. But one day, out of craziness and by mistake, I dial the right number. And Sprinzel is on the phone. You see what happened? The way I know this number, the way I love this girl, is something else. It's a different kind of knowledge. And in other places, Rabbi Shlomo has said that we met the girl on the subway, we had 1948, we had 1967, and we got a number, but we've been dialing the wrong number. And the saddest thing in the world will be
when I decide to stop calling because I think I won't remember the right number. But how, Rabbi Shlomo says, but what is it going to be like that day when I actually, either consciously or subconsciously, dial the correct number? Not just, wow, thank God I found her now. It's, how much deeper do I have this person now? Because of, I look back at, because of all the mistakes that every time I dial the wrong number, it's almost like saying an Avera, or like an Ishbitzer where it's not an Avera, but I just didn't realize that I was really trying to get close to God, but it just looked like a big mistake. Right? To be accurate right now. This is our story. Like, this is why things still are taking so long. Only because when we eventually dial the right number, it's going to last forever. And it'll mean the most it ever meant. We always say this. Imagine tomorrow morning the Beis HaMikdash falls down from Shamayim. You know, I just read this story. Like, whatever, I could ask you, what would that mean to us? But that's a very personal thing I don't want to get into. I just read this story. I forget who it was. They came, some guy walked into a room with the Rebbe and he said to the Rebbe, Mashiach is here, Mashiach is here. Mashiach's coming. He's right here, he's here. And the Rebbe turned pale. And then when they came and told the Rebbe, listen, this guy was Meshuggah, I'm sorry, it's a false alarm. Like, my father once told me that he remembers when he was living on 86th Street and, between Riverside and West End, Upper West Side in the 70s, one guy who I think I know who it is now started running down the street saying, Reb Shlomo saw a para aduma. Reb Shlomo Katz saw a red heifer, a para aduma. Kept on running it down Manhattan, saying, Reb Shlomo saw a para aduma. I don't know, like, I think I know who it is actually right now. But so this guy walks into the Rebbe's and he says, Mashiach is here. And then a few minutes later, and the Rebbe is pale, mamish, chiver kasheleg, pale as snow. And a minute later, the guy comes in and says, so sorry, Rebbe, this guy was Meshuggah, it was a false alarm. And an hour later, the Rebbe was still so pale. So they asked the Rebbe, said, Rebbe, why are you still so pale? It was a false alarm. He says, no. You don't understand. For a second, I felt what it feels like to feel so unready and not prepared, and it freaked the daylights out of me. Because that split second that I thought he was coming, I realized, look at my life. Look at the mistakes I've done. Have I learned from all the mistakes I've done yet? So I think about that story and I'm like, what a chesed on a certain level. That Hashem is still giving us moments to keep on going and fixing whatever needs to be fixed. You know, I have to choose to look at life like that, because if not, I could lose my brain. How many more illnesses do we have to hear about? How many more divorces do we have to hear about? How many more yatomim and almanot? How many more horrible stories of Jews hating each other do we have to hear about? The only thing that can keep me sane is that Hashem is giving me all the opportunities in the world that when Mashiach does come, and Eliyahu Navi will come and say, Hine ze Mashiach ba, I won't be pale. I won't be pale. Not that I'll feel like I'm deserving, but I'll feel like I'm standing on my 2 feet. Ze hayom kivinu lo. This is what I was waiting for. And Rabbi Shlomo says, the only way that you can stand there receiving Mashiach and not jump out the window, but to really be there, is Ein Adam Omed Al Divrei Torah Ela Im Ken Nichshal Bahen, is if you do mistakes. Not lechatchila, b'diavad. Lechatchila, it is absolutely asur for you to do any mistake in the world. But look at our lives. How many b'diaveds do we have in our life on a daily basis? Everything's one big b'diavad, you know. How do you say b'diavad in English? After. You don't?
Ex post facto. You don't.
Third paragraph from the bottom. Can you imagine when this boy and Sprinzela are standing under the chuppah and he says to her, you know what? Let's forget that it took me 10 years to figure out your number. Right? Like, let's forget about that whole passion that was just developed from 10 years of feeling lost, right? How could you forget all those times you dialed the wrong number? And Sprinzler wasn't on the other side of the receiving end. This is, in fact, how he got to Sprinzler. Because each person picked up the phone and said wrong number, that's how he eventually got to her. Because he kept on looking. Look, we take upon ourselves a lot of things and think, if I do this, I'll get to, then the light will come to me. If I do this, but you could either look at, you can either look at those moments of unclarity and be like, not here either. Or you could be like, okay, I'm closer. Like I had a friend who, after he broke up with this girl, he came over and he brought a bottle of champagne, and we got so excited because we didn't know if he was engaged or not. One of my friends here from the frat. So, I'll tell you later. So he came and he brought a bottle of champagne. I'm like, yeah? He says, well, yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I definitely know that I'm one girl closer to the one I'm going to marry. So he had a l'chaim because he celebrated the fact that there was one more, talk about like celebrating mistakes, It's amazing, It was amazing. Anyway, that's a little bit of what, I could look at, those moments of wrong and be like, I'm further. Or I can be like, wrong, arrow. Now, it's like, Mama's just scavenger. Okay, now where I am. Where am I now? Look, the weirdest, the sad part of this whole thing is that we still haven't remembered. We have this hard time easy time forgetting those things which don't work. When you call another group of Jews Amalek, that doesn't really work. And when you also, try to stab people at a gay parade, that also doesn't exactly work either. But we forget that these things don't work. Hashem shows us over and over and over again what doesn't work, only so that when we know what works, it's mamish us doing it. God can do anything, but the whole point of this world is that I should be a part of what God of the anything that God can do. Second to bottom paragraph. And now he's going to tie this whole thing and explain to us again the crossing of the hands, which we'll get back to in a second. You see, when we daven Musaf and Rosh Hashanah, we say, Ki zocher kol hanishkachas ata. God, you remember everything which is forgotten. Ki zocher kol hanishkachot. And that should really, on a Musaf level, that should put some yira into us and be like, listen, you might have forgotten all the bad things, you've chosen to forget all the bad things you did, but a Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't forget anything. So Rabbi Shlomo says, isn't that obvious that God remembers everything? This sentence has maybe millions of meanings, but for the moment, I want to translate it this way. This is what he says. Ki zocher kol hanishkachas ata. When you really stand before God, then you remember, the person who stands before God, you remember all the things you were supposed to forget. What does that mean? There were so many things you had to forget while you were on your way to, so to speak, get to God. And for right now, let's use Sprinzler and the subway story. Okay, again, if every time I dialed the number, all I thought about was how I made a mistake yesterday, I will eventually not dial anymore. I will stop dialing. One time I was sitting at a Tisha B'Av in Los Angeles, and this big Yid, it was a great-great-grandson of the holy Jew of Pshischa, of the Yid HaKadosh of Pshischa. He got up and he said, I have to share the greatest revelation I ever had. I said, what? He said, I just realized that Mashiach is going to come. We said, how do you know? He says, not because he has to come because we've been waiting for so long, but it's that we know deep down inside that we will dial the right number. Because otherwise we wouldn't come back every year to sit for Tisha B'Av and fast. It's because we're Yehuda, who comes from the shoresh of, like we were learning, that the Ishbitzer says the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave the tribe of Yehuda this inherent midah, this quality trait of that Yush has no room in our existence. Despair has no room in our existence, and all of us are part of Yehuda, from the word Yehudim. Why do we keep on showing up? Why do we keep on coming back? Not because things are clear to us and we learn from all our mistakes, but it's because we believe that eventually we will learn from the mistake. We will mamish learn from the mistakes that we make, and we'll make it. So the guy that's calling Sprinzela every day, if he remembers the 3,000 wrong calls that he made, if that's what he's thinking about every time he picks up the phone, then even if he does call that 3,001 time, right? But the energy of how many mistakes he made and all the darkness he went through shows up on the phone, maybe Sprinzela will say, sorry, I'm not interested. Only because he forgot how many times he did the wrong thing does he call, and does he gewalt, does he make that phone call. And gewalt is the person who answers the other line, hear that voice, and is so excited to be reunited with this subway story. That's the only way it'll happen and last and be kavua, be permanent. I have to read this last paragraph again. Ki zocher kol hanishkachot ata, meaning we are. When you really stand before God, like when you're able, after you're going through a lot of darkness and pain, but you stand up on your 2 feet after everything you went through, and you stand before Hashem, you remember all the things you were supposed to forget. There were so many things you had to forget while you were on your way to, so to speak, get to God. But then, when you mamish stand before Him, you remember everything. Nothing can be forgotten. How could it be forgotten? It happened to you. It happened in the world, in God's world. How could you forget? There are many, many people who Rabbi Shlomo brought back in tshuva. He pulled them out of the gutters, and they became way too frum to be associated with him afterwards. Why? Because you have to forget everything, where you came from, the stench of where you came from. Otherwise, how could you make it in the world? It's true. You have to forget in order to start climbing. But when you are there, now what does there mean? I don't know. I think it means being able to stand on your 2 feet and speak a few words of emes to God. Maybe that's what there means. I don't know. You'll find your own perush of what it means that you got there. But when you're standing there, how do you know if it's really for real? If you realize not only are you able to look back and see how what Hashem put you through, but that you have no right to forget everything you went through. Anything you went through. Someone once asked Rabbi Shlomo, I shared this with you a few times, but it's important to bring it back this last time. We're going to end with this. Someone once asked Rabbi Shlomo, how does he deal with these people that he mamish pulled out of the gutter and then they became too frum for him and couldn't talk to him anymore? Happened on many occasions. I mean, now they're all very excited to share all their Karbach stories and go on speaking tours and talk about how close they were, right? But like even the guy, Rabbi Shlomo was so poor that when one of his good friends from yeshiva got married, he didn't even have a money to buy him a gift. So that week he composed a nigun. He had just composed bum 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 bum. The words were different. Back then it was Kivo Yismach Libeinu Ki Beshem Kod Shabbatachnu. When he got to this guy's wedding, he said, I don't have a gift to give you, but I have this nigun. And he started singing, Oy Yishama Be'ar. Gift that's brought more simcha to the world. That guy stopped talking to Rabbi Shlomo a few years later. These stories happen all the time. But Rabbi Shlomo was asked, how do you deal with that? How do you look at that? So he said a gevate. I'm sure you heard me say this. It's classic. It's amazing. I have a video of him sharing this. He says that he once had a friend who was a Russian doctor. Did I ever tell you this to you guys?
He had a good friend who was a Russian doctor, who in Russia, he was a big mumche, he was a big doctor in Russia, but when he came to Eretz Yisrael, they didn't really know what to do with him, so he became a paramedic in Mada, in Magen David Adom. So, one Rosh Hashanah, it was a 3-day Yantiv, meaning it was 2 days Rosh Hashanah into Shabbos. On Shabbos, they get a call. Mada gets a call. Listen, come to this family's house. They're all like, mamish at the end with stomach poisoning, with something that their stomachs were like out of control. He said he mamish walked into a family's house who probably where he was eating something that was rotten for already a few days. In the beginning of Yantiv, they didn't even realize it. By Shabbos, they ate it, and he had to go from stomach to stomach, pumping out people's stomachs. So this Russian doctor says, and he was a single guy, he says, and then I get to this one woman, I start pumping out his stomach, and I take a look at her, and I realize she's the most beautiful woman he ever saw. But he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm pumping out her stomach right now. I'm like, I can't talk to her right now. I can't get her number. What am I? This is nuts. So he says, I pumped out her stomach. I looked at her. I never forgot her. Didn't have to forget her for too long, because a few days later he said he was standing online in Bank Leumi. And he says, lo and behold, he walks into the bank, and the first person in line about to go to the teller is this woman who he just pumped out her stomach. He thinks, mamish, it was unbelievable. What a miracle. What a Purim Chanukah miracle. Unbelievable. So she goes to the teller, she does what she does, and she walks by him, and she passes by, and he stops her, he says, hi, shalom, at zocheret oti? Do you remember me? And she takes one look at him, and she runs out of the bank in horror. You know what the paramedic told Rabbi Shlomo? He said, do you know why she ran out of there with horror? Because she identifies me with the stench of her rotten stomach. That's what she sees when she looked at me. So Rabbi Shlomo said, a lot of these guys can't come and talk to me because they look at me and they identify me with all those poison stomachs that he says, those goyish stomachs which I pumped out. But they look at me,
the association is clear,
and that's what they see. So again, now we'll end, and it'll all, Bezrat Hashem, be very deep in the heart right now. Menashe is the firstborn. Menashe means you have to forget everything in order to continue going in life. But eventually, when Hashem gives you Shabbos, and you have a little bit of light in your life, the first hand goes to Ephraim. Because eventually when you make it, you have no right in life, Yaakov Avinu says, to forget anything that Hashem ever put you through. Because eventually, each and every one of us will pick up the phone and we will dial Sprenzel's number. And if all we're thinking about is our poisoned stomach, that's what she'll sense. If that's the tone of our voice on the phone. Do you want to show up like Nebuch? How do you want to show up when Mashiach comes, How do you want to show up? Look at all the mistakes I made or, wow, look at all these mistakes I made which brought me to right here. This is Yaakov Avinu telling his children what will happen when Mashiach comes. This is what it means when Yaakov says, He'asfu, ve'agid lachem et asher yikre b'achrit yamim. This is acharis hayamim. This is the end of days. The end of days, at the end, I can't forget anything. Till I get there, I can't build Eretz Yisrael if all I have in front of me is the screams of my mother and grandmother in the gas chamber. I can't build Eretz Yisrael. I also can't understand any of this. Ki nashani Elokim et kol amali. Hashem, you removed the pain so that I can build whatever needs to be built. And I believe b'emunah shlema that ki Ephraim, ki Yifra Hashem be'eretz oni. Once I stand on my 2 feet and talk words of emes and shalom to the Ribono Shel Olam, God in His own way will show me how every single step of the way
was crucial, and every mistake I made was crucial, so that now I am standing before God, which is the greatest, greatest gift that any human being can ever experience in this world. It's what the Alter Rebbe refers to as ahava b'ta'anugim, love of the highest delight and pleasure. It's oneg, it's a Yom Shekulo Shabbos. It's a day that's all Shabbos. You know, imagine if a person doesn't work one day of the week. Do you know what Shabbos means to him? Very little. Shabbos doesn't really mean that much to him. If a person's not really working, not toiling anything during the week, when Shabbos comes, it's Saturday. Seventh-day Adventist, like you'd call it. We've already been plowing the field for 6 days. Hopefully 5.5, maybe now, hopefully a full 6 days, so that we'll get to this place of Yom Shekulo Shabbos L'Menucha L'Chai Olamim. I just want to end and say this whole mahalach is asur to say that it should happen, that everyone else should have this. Meaning, you can only turn to Hashem and say, I need to understand this Torah. And I don't care how much pain I have to go through. But his pain, that illness I heard of, for them, you better bring Mashiach immediately. For some, but a person has no right to say, this is a person going through so much hell and saying, listen, guess what? It's so that you become a real person. Shut up. Don't tell me those things. I don't want to hear it. You can't say that someone else should go through all of this. This is our own Shmona Esrei. It's our own avoda. But when you see someone else's pain, you scream to the Rebbeinu Shalom on top of your lungs, Ad Masai. Until when? The balance of doing that for somebody else, yet knowing that in your own life, Hashem will show you everything. That's harmony. That is harmonious. That's glory. That's the most glorious balance in the world. To be privileged to be balanced Yidlach like this, seeing someone's pain, not being able to sleep at night, and yet looking at my own darkness and saying how much closer I am to the right girl. All right, thank you so much for coming, Chevra. And Bezrat Hashem will continue next Sunday night. And we're also starting monthly Shiurim in Tekoa now as well from next week. If you're interested, I'll let you know, and back in Yerushalayim in 2 weeks. So we have a lot going on. If you still didn't get Evan Shlomo Chelik Sheni, this the last Parshat for now, in here, we have it up here. And we're going to be davening Marav. We have a minyan that didn't daven? Or at least 6? We have a minyan, Chama? Yeah, we have a minyan. Daven Marav right now. Women are more than invited to come and daven with us on the other side.